Welcome to Legal Innovation Spotlight, the podcast that brings you the latest advancements in legal tech and knowledge management. I'm Ted Theodoropoulos, and I connect with the industry's brightest minds to provide you with valuable insights and actionable takeaways. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Mr. Lipman, how you doing today, sir?
Great, Ted. How are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you spending a few minutes here. You and I have known each other for a number of years. We were both legal tech vendors knocking on the doors of the AM law firms and used to run into each other at conferences. And obviously, when you were back at Prosperaware, you guys had some SharePoint tools and did some things in adjacent spaces. So we got to know each other a little bit that way. But I wanted to have you on. I know you're up to some new stuff today that I want to hear about. And but why don't we start off with just kind of a little bit of background? You've got really interesting background. Used to be an attorney. You're a JD and an MBA. Why don't you give us an idea of what your background and what you're up to today?
This is what occurred to me the other day. This is my 23rd year in enterprise software. So in some ways, people used to say to me, "Oh yeah, you were a practicing lawyer." Yeah, I was a practicing lawyer. Last time I practiced law was 1998.
Clinton was president.
So it's a long time ago. And what I did is I describe it, kind of my life journey is I woke up on my 30th birthday and decided I didn't actually want to practice law anymore. And obviously there gives you a good picture of age-wise where I am. But really the mission, that I went is I had always loved technology and IT, and I liked figuring it out. And I kind of very self-taught. I have actually no formal training in software, but I got to learn the software business from the inside of actually iManage. And I worked for iManage from about 2001 to 2009. And learned a whole lot about how to operate a software business. And from that, Sheila and I started Prosperaware. And so It's really it's a long journey. Excuse me. And that has really been a lot of education, a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Prosperaware, you did a lot of things with iManage. Is that how Prosperaware was born, just from your knowledge of iManage?
Yeah, Prosperaware was born really on how can we improve and govern iManage more effectively. And then CAM was about taking the same ideas and applying it to multiple systems. Is to really provide information governance, provisioning, management of workspaces or teams or folders or whatever it was across multiple systems. That was a whole vision of what we were doing and what we did with CAM.
Yeah. And in looking at your LinkedIn profile, it looks like you were a practicing attorney and then you were like a director of IT. Like, how did that transition happen?
Kind of back to the 30th birthday thing. I work on my 30th birthday. I basically went to the partner who I worked for, who ran the labor and employment department, and basically said, "I don't want to do this anymore." The IT director had just left. It was a 2-person IT organization. And basically I became the IT. And he went, "Okay, you can be I'll make it so that you're the IT director." It was about 105. There was about 105 people in that firm. I mean, today that's small. Then it was mid-sized.
Yeah, indeed. So, and then did you work with, so Sheila was your CTO and is now in your current venture, but did you guys kind of get to know each other? Was he at iManage as well?
He was at iManage as well. Yeah, we basically have been working together a very long time. So one of the first things I managed was at that time what was called Worksite Web, which was which was basically the web interface to the iManage DMS, and Sheila was running that dev team.
Yeah, you got a good one with Sheetal. I just had a conversation with him yesterday, in fact, just kind of catching up. And so Prosperaware, you guys were around for how long before the Litera acquisition?
So from November 1st, 09 to January 20th, 2022.
And in that time, I mean, you guys had a lot of different products. Like we got familiar. You had a tool. I don't know if it's still in existence, a Sarah that would kind of surface. I manage.
So some of the ideas of a Sarah does not exist, but a Sarah exists in the same ideas in CAM, which is the ability to sync the documents between the DMS, between the DMS and SharePoint.
Yeah,
SharePoint Online, not SharePoint on-prem anymore.
Right. Yeah, and we're gonna talk to you about that a little bit last, but I wanted to kind of get into what you're doing now, which I think is really interesting. So you had a successful exit with Prosperoware. You guys were everywhere in the AmLaw space, and I'm sure you did great. And for some reason, you decided to sign up to do it all over again. So tell us about Belt and what problems you're trying to solve there.
So, I call, and I've kind of written this, there's an origin story, right? Which is we started talking to people about what is the problem that you're facing and what's really the concerns nowadays. And we kept hearing kind of this message about email management, and we need to manage email more effectively. And we're like, okay, I mean, and in some ways I'm going with my DMS head thinking, oh, well, you want to put emails in folders. That's not actually what they were talking about. What they were really talking about was email has reached the point that it's communication overload. And then, I mean, especially if you add Teams, Slack, WhatsApp, all the other tools, it's a complete overload situation. And what people are really concerned about is, how do I prioritize my day? How do I track what I'm supposed to do? When do I do it? Where am I going to do it? How long is it going to take? What commitments can I give to my clients? All of those issues keep coming up. And we started scratching at it some more. And one of the other issues on the management side was, how do I know what my team does? Right? Because hybrid work has really created this environment where it used to be you'd walk down the hall and you'd have the 2-minute conversation with your staff and you know what they do. And that's gone. And so that created an interesting opportunity for us to create software, which is what we've built in Belt.
And then, but what prompted you to start asking these questions? I mean, were you looking for another opportunity, or were these just casual conversations that you were having with people, or were you digging for a potential problem to solve?
It started with, I mean, in some ways, I describe it, I wasn't done. I wasn't ready to go sit on the beach yet. So it wasn't completely casual. It was just trying to start getting an understanding, but you get a little tidbit and it sounded interesting. And we were really looking for something that was a much more end user problem to solve, right? If you really look at a lot of our technology was really about behind the scenes, IT specific. This time we would like to really solve more of a user facing, specific user facing issue. So the two of us really started focusing on that. And it was also really the opportunity in our heads to to build a team, to build a company from scratch, learning everything that we learned from doing it the first time.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I can tell you, operationally, culturally, what are you going to do? And also having the ability to make the investments to really bring in an A team and really build out an A team of people.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of in the same boat. So AcroWire, we started in 2008. We fell into the legal vortex really early, and we were consultants, and we really didn't have great product market fit because law firms don't like unpredictability, and consulting engagements are notoriously unpredictable unless you're a very mature IT organization where you can document your requirements to a pretty granular level of detail. Otherwise, they can't be accurately estimated. So, over time, we built so many intranets and extranets bespoke that we decided to productize. And and then we created InfoDash a couple years ago. And all of that learning, I made so many difficult mistakes. Things like having partners. So it was a single member organization at AcroWire. It was just me. And I said, never again, because I used to have hair, just like you. In fact, when you and I met, I think we both had hair. I was determined to not go it alone anymore. I learned about working on the business versus in the business. And I look at like so many tech founders today that are like 24, 25 years old. And I'm thinking, oh, if you're able to get through that and avoid all the potholes along the way, God bless you. But I feel much better positioned now. I imagine you do too, from all your experience.
I mean, it's interesting. So one of the things, and so I'll give the underlying business go-to-market, right? One of the things that we're doing with Belt Software is we're using a methodology called product-led growth versus sales-led growth, right? So traditionally, software companies use sales-led growth, and product-led growth is the new way you kind of build a company. And the underlying idea of product-led growth is you let people try the software. If they like the software, they pay for the software. That's basically what product-led growth is. But understanding what that meant and how you do it and how you build a company around it was, I did a lot of reading. And what the fascinating discussion as you start digging into it is just this amazing understanding of how many people are starting these companies and have no idea the basics of building product market fit. What is the operational needs that you need to do? What are the financial needs you put together? And all of the things that underlying building a software company, because a software company is not just the software, right? It's an entire set of moving parts that have to actually integrate and work smoothly to serve your customers, serve your employees, and serve your investors.
Yeah, indeed. And again, I feel much better positioned to attack these problems today than I did, 25 years ago. So, well, all right. So you talked a little bit about the problem that you're trying to solve exists in email, but specifically, what is Belt going to do?
So, what Belt's going to do is really we basically, of course, today, so I talked about what the challenge is, which is all the over communication. So what we're doing is we're basically listening today to email, and eventually it's going to be chat and WhatsApp and all sorts of other things in Gmail. But we're starting with the Office 365 Exchange Online world. We're listening to the email. We're reading the email, through a bunch of different AI approaches, including large language models and just traditional natural language processing to identify tasks.
Okay.
And then we find the tasks and we suggest them to you as saying, this is work you need to do, or here's and here's the person you want to listen to, and these are the tasks. So I will say, we are listening to specific people's that you tell us, because obviously you would immediately go is, if you're listening to all my tasks and you're going to suggest tasks, what about all those marketing emails? Well, obviously we have to do something, which was make sure it's only the ones you want to listen to. But identify those, then you can respond to the person. If you don't respond to the person, we'll actually say to you, you might have missed something. And maybe you need to find that missing email. And one of the interesting things that we did get from many people we interviewed, we said, the one feature, tell me that I missed an email from a client or my boss, would be the one feature they would pay for at a lot. So we built that.
Gotcha. And then how does that translate into capacity management? Because since you're inventorying and managing tasks, you have visibility into the workload for each person. Is that part of the picture, capacity management?
Yeah, capacity management is where we're going. So really is one of the ways we're going. But I think the first thing to understand is what we're doing is we're finding the tasks, identifying the tasks. We're also bringing in the person's events and meetings from their calendar, and we're combining the two. And we're doing some innovative things around understanding how people can fit days, asking them to tell us how much time they're going to spend on a particular task, allowing them to, either plan the task for a specific day or plan the task for the following week. So kind of an unplanned category. How many times have you written an email to somebody saying, hi, I'll get to this next week, right?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to put all this to make the software work the way people work in their workflow, right? So let's take a step back. Why email? Well, a lot of people, clients, partners, and other people task each other via sending an email. Can you do the following things for me? Event. And then many of them will then have a further discussion in a Teams or some other chat application. But they know they've given the assignment, they need to schedule it. Many people today spend a lot of time reds, unreds, etc. So once we have all the data together, it's giving us a good picture of what are you doing and how much capacity. And there's some research that shows if you ask most people, they'll say, I can get to that in the next couple of weeks, right? Not remembering that they've already said for the last couple of weeks that they can get to something the next couple of weeks, and they've actually booked themselves out so far, creating a service delivery problem. So it's not just capacity for externally, it's first capacity for yourself. Do you have time to do something? And can you give a good, this is when I can get it done, whether it's precise or I can get it done next week, communication back to a client or any other stakeholder, right? Because no one likes to be let down, right? When you give information and you give, a commitment, you don't want that commitment to go away. You want to deliver to that commitment. The problem is when you start giving commitments, you can't actually deliver. What happens to the person? Either they're burning themselves out or they miss. Both are not good. Both are not good outcomes. So how can we start addressing this core problem? And especially after you've seen people working harder and harder as they work at home.
Yeah. And, one thing about working from home, we've been fully remote. We were a little bit ahead of the curve. We used to have a beautiful office on a college campus in an incubator in Charlotte and had, glass offices and fiber optic connectivity, IP phones. And this is back in the mid 2010s when those things, these days it's table stakes, we just struggled to get people, even my local people would complain about the commute. And so we went virtual in 2016. So we have some experience in how to manage people remotely. But one thing I quickly learned is you no longer have natural boundaries around your work. So in other words, you wake up, you eat breakfast, probably at your desk, your email starts dinging, you start working right away, as opposed to back when you used to wait until you drove into the office. So those lines are so blurry. And I know this sounds like it goes way beyond legal, but in legal specifically, burnout is such a massive problem, especially in the AmLaw world. It's just pervasive. So it sounds like you're going way beyond legal here.
So yeah, our intent in the software is to go beyond legal, but what we define is really, it's a set of people who are first do creative knowledge work, so that includes legal, who work with clients on multiple projects or matters with a dynamic set of people. So if you take that put together, so that covers accounting, consulting, IT professionals, software companies, customer success, salespeople, right? It's a very, very large number of people, but we're starting again in legal, right? Obviously, we have lots of relationships, and this is also very much legal's problem. Burnout in associates is a massive problem. Firms spend, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars training their associates, depending on how you measure it, and then for them to basically burn out or be exhausted and leave the firm, right? None of that is a positive thing. So, and shockingly, people are still you still see people putting in 2,300 hours a year, which is, it's an insane amount of of effort to get something done, since it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not 2,300 hours worked.
Sure. Yeah, it's much more than that. Well, yeah, in our, I think I mentioned this the last time you and I spoke. In our firm directory, we have kind of a self-reported, 30, 60, 90 red, yellow, green availability. It would be really interesting to have a more quantitative measurement of, because it's self-reported, people have to remember to go in and keep these things updated. So having a more quantitative approach to measuring capacity would be very valuable.
Yeah. And our vision is to first start with, as you fill up your days, and then, we'll apply more and more AI for guessing how, for attempting to say, well, how long this type of event typically takes, how long does it take you to do this task? What did you do? And we're putting in a lot of things, which I call reflections. So one of the challenges is for everybody, what did you do today, right? So many organizations have invented, used stand-up methodology now, which started in software development, but use it for their staff to know, oh, what did you do yesterday? Because no one's together anymore. Well, in many ways, we think this software can fill in and provide that stand-up, right? Or this initial of, this is what I did, and here's actually where I spent my time, and become a very quick way to understand it. And that kind of end of day. But also, it also deals with what many of the task management world software screw up, which is, well, you didn't get this done today, you didn't mark it off, so we're just say it's overdue. Well, it may not be overdue. It may just be, I wanted to do it today, but I also could do it tomorrow, the next day, or 4 days from now. Right?
Yeah.
It's really understanding that in the context of when does it need to be done.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know where the term stand-up comes from, but it's a stand-up because you're supposed to stand up, which keeps the meeting brief, right? Nobody wants to stand for an hour. So, stand-up's typically 15, 20 minutes. And so this sounds like a massive opportunity well beyond legal. Like, how big we call it a TAM in the software world, total addressable market. Like, how big is this opportunity you're trying to tackle?
So the math that we applied is that we estimated there's about 150 million people in North America, Europe, and Oceania who may want to use this software.
Interesting.
So it's a big opportunity.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And I've talked to bankers, I've talked to accountants, I've talked to, private equity people. They're all like, yeah, we all have this challenge, right? We all have this fundamental, there's a client, right? And by the way, private equity people, their clients are called limited or LPs, limited partners, right? They want to know how are people investing? Their investment, they also want to ask things of their investment, of where they put their money from their portfolio companies, and get a response. So it's both ways, right? And plus they have internal stakeholders that they need to manage also.
Sure.
Same challenges.
Yeah.
It's all the same basic challenges. It's where, you can say, it's where all, you can say legal's in the middle of all these connected processes.
Yeah. And, I've always had the riches are in the niches mindset. And this is, you're taking a different approach here. How do you anticipate, and you've had that mindset as well. So how is this going to be different in terms of your go-to-market?
It's still, well, let me say, it's still niches, right? It's not Microsoft or Google, right? We're not trying to be Microsoft or Google, right? Microsoft and Google are writing software for 6 billion people. Mm-hmm. In the world, right? They're writing for, billions. We're not writing for the billions. So it's a bunch of niches, just a lot of niches.
Right.
I think the difference though is in these type of niches is kind of this product-led growth where you will be able to, soon enough, as we start launching, hit a button, get a trial, put in a credit card, it's all of that kind of, I can just self-consume that software. So we're designing the software where one person can get value from the software. This doesn't need to, it's very different than normal, legal software. It's buy it for the enterprise.
Right.
This is you can buy it for one person. You can buy it for a practice group, or you can buy it for the enterprise.
Interesting.
That's really the trick of this type of software.
Yeah.
Because it can be bought in a credit card or it can be bought in an enterprise basis. And building software that way is a different journey.
It is. And then what about privacy? Are you going to be SOC 2? Like, is this ISO, like the alphabet soup of, because I would imagine it's pretty sensitive to be reading people's emails.
Alphabet soup. So SOC, we're planning to get our SOC 2 in for, near the end of first quarter, move on to ISO, move on, you do one at a time.
Yeah.
So we've, this is another thing you have to do it, you have to start this way from birth. Very specifically, we had long discussions in even how we designed the software to make sure that we would fit all the security requirements that people have, and how do we understand it. So simple example is we don't get it. We never have a super user account, right? We never have, we only can access that person's email for what they have. We don't keep any of their data. It's all transitory, right? We've done as much as we can do to use the architecture and technology to do the work, not keep the data, get rid of it. We do even things where we anonymize personal data before we even submit it to any of the AI engines. We're doing a lot of things that what is called anonymizing, sometimes called tokenization. So we basically first turn it into something that somebody wouldn't recognize. So we're not leaving anything with anyone, even when we're using a third-party service.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds interesting. I'm going to be watching closely as you guys progress here. I want to shift gears a little bit. So in your ProsperaWare days, we talked about CAM, Cloud Access Manager.
It would basically say it was cloud access it was cloud application management was where the CAM initials were, but it just became a word.
Yeah.
At a certain point.
Right. So, but there was a heavy Teams component in there, and I wanted to kind of get your take on Teams in legal is something I talk a lot about, and I think that Teams has a really bright future in legal, especially in the external collaboration space, formerly known as extranet. Extranet's, the terminology doesn't make sense anymore just because we don't have firewalls. Everything is in the cloud. Everything is an extranet, but we'll call it external collaboration. And Teams is uniquely positioned because 92 out of the Fortune 100 use Teams as their primary collaboration platform. 92% of the Fortune 100. They're the biggest buyers of legal services. At some point, they're going to request that law firms meet them where they are. That's our theory. And Teams has some really interesting features with shared channels that provide some real advantages in terms of eliminating friction over the way extranets happen today. Where every firm has their own HiQ site with a own URL, own separate set of credentials, different user interface. Like, as a big enterprise buyer of legal services, I've got 40 panel firms. I got to go to 40 different places so it makes sense, we think. But, you guys clearly invested in, you had to think Teams had a future in legal. It's taking off, but slowly. But like, how do you see, what roles do you see Teams playing in law firms?
I saw Teams really in two potential roles, right? Clearly the extranet was the easy one, where you could templatize it, produce them, provide access to it, do security. It's there. From the end user perspective, it's the same. It's in essence the same user experience. They don't have to learn something new. So we're dead on the same place. I think really expected shared channels, which really came out after, in 22 to really help and improve that experience, so that you didn't necessarily have to worry about it. You didn't have to worry about, I have to switch teams.
Switch tenants.
Which always annoys people, all the tenant switching.
Yeah.
So I saw that as going to further encourage people to do it. I also saw it as the extranet, right? So I think if you underlie it, I think I always, the question is what's the right product? Where should data be? if you talk to a lot of information governance professionals, they go, I understand that IT says all the data is in the DMS, but with our reality hat on, the data is everywhere.
Sure.
Right. So the question is, do you have the attitude, just use the tools that people want to use and then just manage it? Or do you try to get people to adopt the right technology?
Yeah, I know. And that's that question is not unique to legal. I spent 10 years in financial services, and there was more shadow IT in big banks. And one of the reasons is, financial services is the most regulated industry out there, right? The alphabet soup of regulators are constantly scrutinizing how banks manage everything: software development processes, privacy data, anti-money laundering, just so as a result of that, because everything became so rigid from all the regulatory scrutiny, lines of business were, going out and hiring guys like me. I did this in 2 different lines of business at Bank of America where, hey, you can get something done. Sometimes we would use their utility, like the enterprise-wide SharePoint environment, and build solutions using InfoPath, just because going through the traditional, they call it SSP, standard software process at the bank, would take you 2 years to build anything. I could go with SharePoint and InfoPath and some workflow. I could build a solution in 30 days. So yeah, man, that question is not unique to legal, but it's a very relevant one.
And it's going to keep going, right?
Yeah.
And that's, so I mean, that was some of the underlying ideas. So even in CAM, there's this idea of a directory. It tracks all of the places where you might have data for a matter. All of that was there. And Teams, and to me, Teams is just one more place. In some ways, it's just saying, let the users be, or at least give the users the collection of things they want to use. Because if users don't like a product, square pegs, round holes don't work, right?
Especially in law firms where everybody feels like a special snowflake, and these attorneys with big books of business that draw a lot of water and influence in the firm, telling them to do something they don't like doing doesn't always work. But so today, like, we've got a good cross-sectional view between AcroWire and InfoDash. We've worked with about half the AmLaw, over 90 AmLaw firms. And I have seen a pretty good cross-section of how Teams is being used in legal. And it's very immature for the most part. There are a handful of exceptions. I know of about 5 AmLaw firms that are doing like meaningful client matter work in Teams. There may be more than that, but I know of about 5. And the rest are, kind of tiptoeing in using Teams for presence and chat and online meetings. But I think there's so much more opportunity, but it does require, a tool like CAM or Intap workspaces today. InfoDash, we're working on some provisioning and governance stuff too. We're never going to compete with a CAM or a workspaces. That's goes beyond where we want to go. But to provision extranets in Teams, we have to have some basic capabilities. But adoption has been slower than I would have anticipated in legal. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this kind of goes under the change is difficult. Patterns and practices, once established, don't move very often. The reality is are the corporate legal departments really, are they using Teams beyond chat and meetings, right? I think that's, the technology investment in corporate legal is pretty high at the moment. And they are, in many cases, focused on contract management or their or case management or matter management or whatever they want to call it on that side. And is that really where they're putting their energy? And they're kind of, from a corporate IT perspective, saying, well, yeah, there's this Teams things, but We're focused here in how we're going to manage things. So I think it's all over the map.
Yeah, it is. We're eager to see it move forward because we do think, like I was mentioning earlier, with shared channels, we're not aware of a more frictionless mechanism to engage with clients. So, again, if I'm on the buyer side of legal services, I could get notifications right in the same place I get other notifications, people at mention, and I see it, as opposed to having to switch tenants or log into a completely different system. So lots of opportunity there.
I think it's a question which is adoption and change is slow.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the underlying thought is once people are presented with a set of technology and they get used to it, they don't necessarily want to pull up stakes and change again.
Yeah. Well, you're
right?
banking on that, right? With Belt and email. I mean, that's it.
I'm not, though. It's actually an empty hole, is my argument. Right? What people do today and are frustrated are, this is left unread and I manage these folders, or I folder structure around, or I do something else. There isn't many people. We're not really trying to complete with Planner or Asana or that. We think, clearly we're not a project management tool. We're filling a gap, and you can really think about it as, where does project management software fall down in creative knowledge work? Pretty simple, work breakdown, right? So if you take, the challenge is, and let's put it in a legal context. Let's say we're going to do principal agreements for a merger or acquisition. And it's a big, there's even, task codes for that. And you can put that, right? And someone can tell you from a financial perspective, on average, it takes this many hours and it'll cost you this much money to do that, to get the principal agreements done. But no one can actually tell you, sitting there today, what the journey exactly will look like, right? Because you don't know what issues the other side's going to raise. You don't know what, you may have a good idea what's going to be the hot topic, right? There's always some level of consistency, but you just don't know specifically what it's going to be, and it veers left and right. If you put it in the context of objectives and key results, right? Lots of companies and lots of law firms and lots of other people set up objectives for their organization. You can say from a project plan perspective, the executives are going to meet and come up with the objectives, right? There'll be a draft objective here, and we'll refine it and we'll publish them on this date. And we'll roll them out to the organization on this date. And we have all the milestones defined, and that's in the project plan. The journey of defining those objectives is not straight, right? Because you talk internally, it's never going to be, we're going to do 3 interviews with this group set of constituencies, and then this, and then that, and that's how we're going to get to the objectives, right? Ted, you've been doing this long enough in running companies. It kind of is a organic, self-created process. So where we're trying to come in is that deal with that organic nature of how people work in creative knowledge work.
Yeah. So, something really occurred to me is, are you going to have, this isn't going to be a legal specific solution, but it feels like there's opportunities for time capture in here with, like, if you guys are estimating the amount of time it's going to take for a particular task, I mean, that's got very relevant use cases in both estimating and the actual capture of time. Is that on the roadmap at all?
So we already, in version 1, what we're building is this, what we call end of day, which is I was talking about, is this idea of reflection. We're giving people the opportunity to go, this is what I did today, and actually give some timing to it. Not that we're doing the time entry, because that's a little more formal.
Yeah.
Right? But here's this task. Okay, now I have you could call it's kind of like this, the notes you write at the end of the day before you actually do your time entry. Because sitting down and actually doing the time entry, when you have to write like 2 sentences or 3 sentences for every time entry, takes a whole bunch of time.
Sure.
But at least if you've accurately thought through in that reflection of what I've done done. It serves legal in the sense of it's a pre-time capture. In other industries, it can just be, what is the stand-up? What did I do, and what can I tell my boss I worked on yesterday?
Yeah.
Right. But we've built this in a way that you can actually tag with matter or project or client each one of those tasks. And so with an enterprise security model that over time will allow people to then report, where, in other words, the boss can log in and report, how busy were you? The boss, the owner of the matter or the project manager can log in and run a report and say, this is what's been done on this project for the last week and what is supposed to be done next week. So instead of having project status, instead of worrying about meeting before before the project status call,
right,
actually you can run that. Or in the project meeting, you can go, oh, well, we need to do this. When can you do that, Joe? And Joe goes, 2 weeks from now. Right. Instead, you can see what is Joe's availability.
Yeah. Well, you know what would be another interesting use case here? So in the consulting world, one challenge that we always had to manage was scope. And where we ran into trouble was clients would email, not through our PM, sometimes to our architect or our developer directly, and make a request. And rather than funneling that back through and creating and evaluating if it falls in scope or out, they just do it. And a tool like this could actually help highlight, hey, this is actually out of scope, and formalize that, because everything gets lost in email. And you go back through and you try and read and be like, okay, who requested it? When was it approved? Seems like there's opportunity there as well.
I think there's opportunity even if a PM can run that report, because the person just did it, they did it.
Yeah.
The PM doesn't really learn about it till like 2 months later.
Till they see the time entry, and then questions start getting asked. Yeah.
Right. So this is a way of actually actively looking at it and saying, or when the person says, well, I can do that for you next week.
Mm-hmm.
They put it on their plan for next week. And then at least will pop up and the PM can pull the tool and go, wait, what is that? That's not in scope.
Right. Yeah. That should be on a change order somewhere. That's always been a challenge with ours, because we work really hard and we drill into our employees, make the customer happy. And sometimes you got to evaluate, you're actually going to make them unhappy by doing that, because they're going to get a bill that wasn't approved. And, so it's, do you want to experience the pain now and highlight it as an out of scope item? Or do you want to face it later when they get the bill and things have exceeded their estimates?
And the worst version of that I call is sometimes those requests are really weird use cases that will happen, 0.001% of the time, and only satisfies one person over here who's just doesn't actually have any real business. It's just a squeaky wheel.
Right. Yeah.
So it's even worse because it's just the lawyer who whines. It's the person who whines to the project manager that they have to have this feature before the firm can deploy enterprise wide.
Right. Well, I know we're running out of time here. This is great stuff. So I'm very interested to see how you guys progress. I enjoyed watching your success at Prosperaware. I'm sure you're going to have similar, if not greater, success with Belt. Are you going to be? I know this isn't a legal specific solution. Are you going to be at events, Legal Tech, ILTACon? Is that on your radar?
At a Legal Tech, we'll be around. We'll be around at ILTA. We're all going to try to figure out what it is. Part of the play is, that's part of the journey that we're trying to understand is how much in-person events do we need to do?
Yeah.
It's an interesting, so I can't say, yes, we're going to be at everything. I think it's just a question of what makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think we're too nascent to figure that out.
Yeah. You're still early on. Well, good stuff. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us and sharing what you're up to. I know the audience will be interested to hear that as well. And once you get a little bit of runway behind you, we'd love to have you back and hear how things are going.
Yeah, it won't be too long. We're actually talking about starting, time-wise, we're talking basically starting pilots with people in March.
Wow.
So we're really pretty much there.
Good stuff. And if people want to find out more, where do they go?
They want to go to belt.ai.
Cool. Awesome. Well, good stuff. Keith, I appreciate your time and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content. Want to dive deeper into the world of legal innovation? Connect with us online at getinfo-.com, where you'll find additional resources and articles. You can also follow us on social media at getinfo- to stay updated on the latest news and insights in the field of legal tech and knowledge management. Once again, thank you for joining us today on Legal Innovation Spotlight, a fireside chat series hosted by InfoDash.